you went under the wheels.
Perfected.
Welcome to Under the Wheels. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Gabe.
And in today's episode, we're going to talk about 2 year-end movies. We're going to talk about Licorice Pizza and Matrix 4. Even though, you know, at the end of the last episode, the Spider-Man episode, you basically gave your review of Matrix 4 if you stayed past the end credits.
That's true. But we're going to go even more in depth on whatever that was.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I have actually now seen it, and so I can offer some interesting points, and we can talk in greater detail and get into the nitty gritty of the motherboard of Matrix 4. Anyway, so let's start with Licorice Pizza, the latest movie from Paul Thomas Anderson, which we can call a film because he shoots on film.
Yeah.
So, what did you think of Licorice Pizza?
I thought it was great. Shiny and chrome, best movie of the year. Like everyone else.
Like everyone else. It is not my favorite movie of the year. It was very good. When people ask me, like, oh, did you like Licorice Pizza? The word I use to describe it, which might sound odd, is cute. I thought it was cute. I don't think that's a bad way to describe it. I think it's...
You mean you don't think it's a pejorative, or you think it's accurate?
What do you... Now I have to look up words here.
Pejorative is an insult.
I don't think it's an insult. Because it's really hard to find... Okay, so Paul Thomas Anderson is famous for, like, Boogie Nights, There Will Be Blood... The Master, Phantom Thread, Hard 8. None of these movies I would say are very, like, I don't know, like...
Sweet or charming.
Yeah. Yes, that's an excellent way of putting it. And Licorice Pizza, even though it's a little bit strange in some aspects, I think it nails the sort of... It's just like a very charming movie. And that makes it very easy to watch, even when there are some things that are like a little bit questionable in it. And there's only one thing that's really
there's a couple things that are a little sus in that movie, but we'll touch on those.
Yeah, I would say it's like a solid shiny and chrome. I think it's probably my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie since The Master. Because I didn't love Phantom Thread. I didn't love Inherent Vice.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's really good. I think, like, I would probably watch this. I probably like this one a little bit more than I like The Master. Just because The Master's so, like, taxing. You watch it and it's a very exhausting experience. But it's a very good experience.
I would say that, I mean, it's tough because for me, The Master is perfect in every way. It's like one of the best movies of all time. This is one of the best movies of the year. The Master is one of the best movies ever.
The Master is like Apocalypse Now, and this movie is like Saving Private Ryan as far as war movies go.
Yeah, you could say that.
So, Gabe, tell us about the plot of Licorice Pizza.
There isn't one. Hooray! The movie is about 16-year-old Gary Valentine, who's a child actor and crazy person, who is always coming up with like various get-rich-quick schemes and is kind of in a hurry to grow up. Like, he wants to be an adult right now. And he develops a crush on a like photography assistant who's way older than him, named Alana. And it's about the two of them and their lives sort of intertwining in the San Fernando Valley in the 1970s. As Gary hatches all these like weird get-rich-quick schemes that succeed or fail for one reason or another. And Alana tries to sort out like what the fuck she's doing with her life. And that's basically it. I mean, it's just like a series of little vignettes over a period of a couple of years.
Oh, so you think it does take place over a couple of years?
I think so. Just the way they frame the oil crisis and stuff.
Yeah. That was the one thing that I wasn't sure of, because there's that moment where where a special character is like, "How old are you?" And she's like 28, and he's like, "What?" And she's 25, and I was like, does that mean that 3 years have passed, or was she lying the whole time and this whole thing just got a lot creepier? And I couldn't decide what. So I like to believe that a couple of years passed. But
in my mind, sure. I think a couple of years passed. I guess like if we really want to settle this once and for all, we can figure out when Joel Wax ran for mayor.
I mean, I tried. I like to assume that it took place over a couple of years, because then the ending is like not, as bad, I guess. But what's funny about I want to call him Cooper. What's funny about Gary is that like the whole time, about a third of the way through the movie, I was like, Gary is basically just like Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes, but like an older version of him. And that made the movie a lot more entertaining as well, because I was like, oh, it's like Paul Thomas Anderson wrote like a Calvin and Hobbes movie, but like when he's older.
He's based on some actual child actor who's like buddies with Tom Hanks and stuff.
Yeah, that's what I had read, that like the story about him owning a waterbed company and owning a pinball company was based off of another actor. Let me see if I can pull up to find the specific actor. All right, let's see.
Okay, so it happens over at least a couple years, because it according to Wikipedia, it starts in 1973. Pinball was legalized in California in 1974 or later. Overturned in 74.
I'm sorry, I was reading the casting, and it's like described as a family and friends project, and I was like, described as a family-friendly project? I mean, I guess. But anyway, this is gonna be like luckily on these moments I just go in and I cut it out, so people don't realize that there's been silence for like 30 seconds.
There's been like massively pregnant pauses.
Okay, here it is. Gary's character is based on Gary Goetzman, and many of the incidents that occur in the film come directly from stories that Goetzman told to Paul Thomas Anderson. And apparently, like the plot of the movie, or like the inciting incident of the movie, was like Paul Thomas Anderson was on a high school campus and he saw this pimple-faced teenager talking to or hitting on the photography assistant of like the person who was doing the class photography. And he's like, ooh, I can make a movie out of this. It's like, that's such a Paul Thomas Anderson thing. So, yeah, I thought the premise was kind of like, I thought at first, based off of the trailers, I thought it was going to be like she was like 18 and he was 15. The fact that she was like 9 or 10 years older than him was a little like weird. And so then when she's like, is it weird that I hang out with Gary and his 15-year-old friends? I'm like,
yes,
a little bit weird.
It's weird. Yeah,
it's weird. I mean, but if not for that, so what is it about the movie that you like so much?
It's really, really fun. It's just like, I don't know. It's a very like breezy, delightful, sweet, charming movie. It has all like the technical fireworks and humor of like Boogie Nights, but none of the like darkness of it. So yeah, I don't know. It's just like it's just massively entertaining from wall to wall. All the like, it's technically superb. Like, it looks great. The dialogue is razor sharp. It's also just interesting, seeing how all these different characters are drawn and their interactions with each other. Because it is like about kind of the two worlds of childhood and adulthood. And how they're, the line between them is kind of blurrier than we think. And, it's like Gary Valentine, he's 15 and he carries himself like an adult. He's in a hurry to grow up. He's launching all these weird businesses. He wears a suit all over town for reasons that don't quite make sense. And like he's got all these weird sponsorships with like restaurants and stuff where he sits at the bar and plays like he's a grown up. And then he's in love with Alana, who's a 25-year-old, who's an adult and is supposed to have her shit together, but she's just a child. Like she lives in her parents' house. She's constantly like ruining opportunities for herself by throwing these huge like temper tantrums. She's super volatile. And they make kind of an odd pair where they're both like, it's like an adult who's stuck being a kid and a kid who desperately wants to be an adult. And then they are, kind of go on a series of adventures together in the adult world and are continually disappointed by how petty, childish, mean, vain, and cruel grown-ups are. Which, yeah, I mean, it's all very interesting stuff. And again, it's just like it's a really like joyous movie. I don't know, it's like one of those movies that just like celebrates everything about life and being alive and being a kid and growing up and all that and it is cynical in some ways, but not really that much. So yeah, it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. There were a lot of times where I was like, oh, for example, like near the end of the movie, Alana's working at the at the campaign office, and it's like it's nighttime and she gets a call and it's like, oh, he left his wallet again. And I was like, oh no, is this where it's going to go into some really dark and bad territory? It's like, oh God. But luckily it doesn't, for lack of a better word. And it
with
actually,
Anderson, like it always could.
Yeah.
And like there is that darkness looming kind of just outside of your view at all times, especially as the movie goes on, and the adult characters that the kids deal with kind of become more and more unhinged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Especially like they have all of those great guest stars in sort of those like adult roles. Yeah. It's like, ooh, like what is gonna happen? And the guest stars that they have in there are not afraid to go out on that limb either, which is nice and refreshing. And obviously Paul Thomas Anderson's really good with his actors, because if he weren't, he wouldn't get like these great names in his movies all the time.
These great names doing great performances in cameos.
Yep. Like of course. So you brought up what's his name? Oh my God, John C. Reilly, and you're like, yeah, it's a blink and you'll miss it cameo, and I was like, okay, I forgot that you said it was blink or miss, and I heard his voice, and I was like, John C. Reilly, and then it passed, and I was like, oh yeah, Gabe said it was a blink and you'll miss it cameo. Yeah, so I actually I kind of like the way that you summarize the movie there, because like there is no plot. It is just a series of things that happen that sort of help you better understand the characters. And that's like when they talk about character driven versus plot driven, this is like the most character driven movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, this is on the furthest extreme of character driven.
It's like if you even realize that there's a plot contrivance in the movie, I'd be surprised, because it's just like stuff is happening and the characters are instigating most of the stuff that happens. Mostly Gary, but
mostly Gary. Yeah, I mean, which is a good way to tell the story, because it's like if you do have to squeeze a contrivance in there for one reason or another, it's a lot harder to notice if like the characters just drive everything.
Right. And like it's also like, even if it is a contrivance, like what's nice in the movie is it's all character motivated contrivances. Like the gas issue. It's like, oh yeah, we already didn't have gas, and it's like, oop, they didn't have gas, and so then when it happens later in the movie, you're like, yep, of course. The one thing about the movie is like it gets off on the right foot immediately with like that super long, super complex. Well, I guess it's not really that complex, like if you're watching it, but I feel like mentally it's a very complex
Behind
tracking
the scenes,
shot.
I'm sure it was a bitch to shoot.
That first tracking shot where it's just how it just starts on like on her feet or whatever, and it goes up and it's just her and it's just Alana and Gary talking for like 5 minutes as they're walking, and I'm like, this must have been, yeah, like you said, it must have been a nightmare, especially for the actors. I wonder if they shot it like early in the project or later when they were like used to memorizing lines and able to deliver the dialogue really well. But that first tracking shot to me, it set the pace. I was like, all right, Paul Thomas Anderson, you're back. Here we go. Let's go. Let's move.
I know. Yeah,
Well,
like that shot / scene, because they're basically the same thing.
Right.
You know, it does such a good job of injecting you into the movie, because like there's no wasted time. Like you're immediately in it. You're getting all this, again, incredibly sharp Anderson dialogue. The characters are basically establishing everything you need to know from here on out. Like there's like, hi, like it's because it's what, you know, yearbook photo day at Gary's high school.
Yeah.
So Gary first sees Alana and starts hitting on her, and she's just like, what? But also like intrigued. And yeah, they basically tell you everything you need to know about them in that first scene, and it's really entertaining. And like the camera moves so well as they go through the scene, and you know, it's got that like nice California sun backlighting everything. And yeah, I mean, it just shoots you right into it, and then like that's the whole setup for the movie, because again, it has no plot, and it just kind of gets roaring from there.
And like I remember just when I was watching it, it stands out because it's like it's 2 back-to-back scenes, because as soon as they enter the building, like they had to cut it and then move on to it, and it just leads seamlessly into that. But yeah, it's like that whole sequence is done, and it's like a splash page in a comic book where it's just like, all right, we're in it now, and whatever happens next happens next.
Yeah, well, and I think it helps that there's no edits as well, because like
Right.
it allows you to just kind of immerse yourself in what's happening, and it doesn't break your immersion or your concentration. You know, it makes it feel very natural and alive, whereas like if it was edited conventionally, it would just feel very stilted probably.
Yeah. Have we ever talked about I don't know if we ever talked about this, or if I even have talked about it with you, like the sort of like immediacy in long takes. Have we talked about this at all?
Not really. Maybe touched on it
Okay.
in the Stalker episode.
The Stalker episode, which will eventually get a release. So when it comes to theater, because like I'll probably put the stuff we talked about Macbeth at the tail end of this. When it comes to theater, like one of the reasons that you can kind of meander so much in the dialogue is because like even though you're in the moment, you're sharing the space with people in the same way that you would like share the space with someone who's having a conversation with you. So like if it's like you don't have to remember every single line that a person says in theater, but like in film, for some reason, I don't know if it's like a psychological thing, but it like every single frame feels essential. So like having a pregnant pause while you look up who Gary was inspired by, if you have that in a film, even if it's only 5 seconds, if you're watching a movie, it feels like it's 30 seconds. So like you're right, having the tracking shot where it's moving and they're talking, by having a lot of that all work almost like a like a ballet sequence together, where it's like the movement is moving us forward, the dialogue is moving us forward, the characters are moving forward. Like if that were real life, that conversation would probably be like, 7 or 8 minutes long. But because in film, because it's all done in one take, we feel like the immediacy of that moment a lot more. Now, I know you. I assume that you kind of understand this. It's kind of for the listeners out there who don't really think about this thing. Like, why are filmmakers so obsessed with long takes, and what makes certain long takes so much better than others, or why do they try to collapse so much space into a good long take, or why does it feel like a take that's like 2 minutes long and it feels like, oh man, that was amazing, it felt so long, and it's like, oh, but it was only 2 minutes of your life. Like, why does it feel so much longer when you're watching a movie?
Yeah, long takes, because you start to feel the weight of the time that's passing. They have a sense of like urgency to them, where like if you have a long take in a thriller, you can actually build a lot of tension just by having a long take that doesn't really do much, because it's like in a thriller context, there's like a certain anxiety that builds up when you just have to sit there and experience each second in real time. And if you have a framing of like, oh, our main character's in danger, then that tension gets like exacerbated.
Right.
Whereas with this, it's more like
we're hanging out with them longer than it seems.
Yeah,
like
it's like we're there with them. We're sharing a space with them. We're sharing a time with the characters. We feel a part of their conversation. Like it's like kind of how like when you when you listen to a podcast, you feel like you're hanging out with the people on it, even though like they have no idea who the fuck you are. It's like that same kind of feeling where you're like, oh, I'm hanging out with the characters and stuff. And it just draws you in so much better than like editing it to bits would. Like editing it to bits would serve an entirely different purpose if you're trying to, have some sort of dramatic tension or power dynamics displayed or something like that. But this is just like immersing you in the world so that for the rest of the movie you are in it,
Yep. It's the splash page of movies. I don't know why I thought of that, but like you were right. Like the way that it condenses it, or the way that like this one scene set. It's the same in like Hard 8, also by Paul Thomas Anderson, where it's like that one opening scene at the coffee shop that then moves to the casino. Like how that sets up the pace for the rest of the movie. Then again, in that movie, that's like the first eighth of the movie is John C. Reilly getting out of Hawk. But yeah, it's also weird. Like, I know you were talking about his like razor sharp dialogue, and Paul Thomas Anderson's dialogue is really good, but there's something about his style. I don't know. Maybe it's just like me, where it's like, it's showy, but not as showy as like other people's, right? Like, I feel like when Hard 8 came out, like his closest, or the people that he was being compared to the most at that point were like, Quentin Tarantino or something, where it's like, oh, but Paul Thomas Anderson's good, but he's kind of like an imitation of Tarantino, because it's like, oh, the obsession with dialogue, the fancy camera moves and the fancy camera work, and obviously they've gone in like very different directions.
Okay, I think this. I know that they're friends, but I think this idea that there's some sort of friendly rivalry is like, that is all Tarantino's imagination.
Like Tarantino and IndieWire conspiring against Paul Thomas Anderson.
I think Tarantino likes to think he has a friendly rivalry with Anderson. Where it's like, if there was one, Anderson has been winning since day one, quite handily. And they also make two completely different types of movies. So it's like, there's not a whole lot to compare. Like, yes, they have a lot of talking in them, but like Anderson's dialogue is very literary, and then Tarantino's dialogue is very like
Tarantino's dialogue is super flashy, and Paul Thomas Anderson's dialogue is is very grounded.
It's like, well,
best
yeah,
way I can
Tarantino's
put it.
dialogue is like cool guys in sunglasses, like slinging jokes and like witty remarks back and forth. So like, if Paul Thomas Anderson is what Tarantino wishes he was, Tarantino is what like Shane Black wishes he was. Um, like all of Tarantino's dialogue is fantastic, but it's in like this very stylized, like funny, witty sort of way. Whereas Anderson's dialogue, yeah, it's very grounded. It's more naturalistic.
As far as like who is if there is a rivalry between the two, as far as who is winning, to me it depends on how you define winning.
Yeah. Well, also
Cue
like
Charlie Sheen, but it does. It to me
it
like,
does, yeah, because I think
like-
Tarantino's more popular.
Tarantino's more popular. His movies get more like they make a lot of money, and his budgets are bigger, and like everyone knows who he is.
Yeah.
But you can make the argument that Tarantino kind of recycles or rehashes a lot of similar things,
Well,
or that
everyone-
a lot of what he does is just
Everyone
like-
does that though.
yeah. Well, yeah,
Well,
but like
I mean, I would say the thing with Tarantino versus Anderson is he's making one type of movie, Tarantino's making another. Tarantino's movies are very like stylized and pulpy, and they take place in a very like heightened world, but heightened in the sense that like heightened in the same way that like Clerks and Spider-Man are both heightened. Anderson's work is also has a very distinctive style. His work is very stylized, but it's stylized in the way that like The Great Gatsby, the novel, is stylized. Like
Yeah.
it's like a very like
I get what
artful
you're
way of portraying the world, as opposed to like what if we were in a comic book, you know?
right. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I was gonna say like Anderson's style is like 70s American, and Tarantino's style is like 70s children's movies and 70s French movies. I mean, like and Tarantino's movies are a lot more like casually watchable, but I think that like I know that this has gone on like a weird direction. I just had it written down here because I thought when Hard Eight came out that I feel like people thought just the way that the dialogue was layered, like what's his name, the old guy who plays as Sidney, he's like, would you like a cigarette? Here, take a cigarette. If you smoke this cigarette, by the time you're done smoking this cigarette, we will have a plan. You will be calm. Are you calmer now? Good. You're calmer because we smoked this cigarette. Now that we've smoked this cigarette, we're going to go out to our car. And I'm like, okay.
Wait, what
get
is
what you-
this?
In Hard Eight, like when he's talking to John C. Reilly the first time, he's like, and he's just like talking about.
Oh
like,
yeah, I don't remember actual dialogue from that movie, just plot points and like images from it.
But I agree with you because like you look at There Will Be Blood, and it's just like what, or like The Master. You know, like who is making a movie like The Master? You know, who's able to get that money? And then when you get that money, how do you use? You know, how do you use it? So like I think I said last time, I don't remember if I included it in the episode, but it's like I'm hoping that Paul Thomas Anderson is getting enough money for his movies that he can make them the way he wants, because some of his budgets seem like very down to the wire. Like, oh, that seems like a very low amount of money to do what you want to do. But he's able to do it, and he gets a lot of like kudos and awards for them. So like it depends on how you define winning.
Yeah. I define winning as making the better movies, which is I think what Tarantino cares about more than making money.
But like again, like better movies as like as defined by what?
They're
and
just
I think
better, man. They're just better. Because like at the end of the day, Tarantino, I think, doesn't care that much about making money. He's like, making money's nice, but he makes the movies he wants to watch, you know?
Right.
He's in this because he loves it. And in that sense, he's defeated us all at the game of life. But I mean, back to Licorice Pizza.
Well, let me just say, like, I think what it is that, like, Tarantino's movies, when you watch them, they don't really say anything, and Paul Thomas Anderson's movies have something to say, and I think that's what probably makes them
Well, the
better.
thing with Anderson is his movies have a ton to say, even when they seem like they don't.
Yeah.
Like, even Licorice Pizza, which seems like it has nothing to say, I think has a lot to say.
Oh yeah, I think like, I just think about the ending of the movie, and I'm like, like, he nails the ending. That's the thing. You gotta nail the ending. He nails the ending. He nailed the ending in like all of his movies. You nail the ending, you're good. Like, and it's not just like, oh, it's like, oh, okay, that ending was satisfying. It's like, it's like, no, you gotta nail the ending. Anyway, going back to Licorice Pizza.
So, Bradley Cooper, Best Supporting Actor. Is it? Should we call it now? Can we lock it in?
I mean, who else is in the race? Let's see. I have to put it in context because I want
with way more screen time than him. That's for sure.
Oh my god, to play, like, I didn't know who he was before the movie, and then as soon as Bradley Cooper said his character's name, I was like, of course he's this guy. Of fucking course. Let's see, Best Supporting. He's already been nominated and won for a couple.
Oh, really?
For like a couple of the smaller, like, indie festivals, I think. All right, Gold Derby. Let's see what we have here. Let's see, leading contenders: Power of the Dog, Coda, Belfast, Ben Affleck from The Tender Bar. Jared Leto for House of Gucci. Why?
The makeup, though.
I am going to basically be Super Mario Brother. Let's see, Belfast.
Wahoo!
Let's see, there's someone from West Side. Oh, here's Bradley Cooper. He's 7th on their list.
Okay. I mean, yeah, he's only in the movie for 3 to 5 minutes total. But holy shit, is he good? I mean,
yeah,
so all of the major cameos are excellent. Like,
Sean Penn is great.
Sean Penn's great. Tom Waits is great. Benny Safdie is great.
He's really good in this. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always funny seeing him pop up and stuff because he's just gone from, like, super mega indie gutter filmmaker with his brother to like being an actor in, like, kind of big deal movies.
It's the agent's just like, hey, do you want a small part in this movie? Sure. You want a small part in this movie? Sure. Like, I hear it's like that easy after, because, like, he's I don't know if it was nominated for an Academy Award, but, like, he's on the map now, so his agent can be like, oh, do you want to do something with this? It's like, yeah, sure, I heard this is a thing. And then, like,
do you want to be in Pieces of a Woman? Like, sure.
Sure, why not? I'll be in weird projects that'll give me money, and, like, yeah, Benny Safdie, that's hilarious. Yeah, he was good in it, though. I was like it was one of those things. It was like a Game of Thrones death, where it was like, as soon as that twist happened, you were like, yep, it makes sense. It was all set up. Like, I didn't know anything about him.
I didn't know anything about Joel Wax I didn't know anything about any real person in the movie.
I knew John Peters.
Oh, okay. I didn't know John Peters. I didn't know Joel Wax. I didn't know the actor that Sean Penn is based on, or any of this shit. But, like, yeah, it is, like, perfectly set up where, like the Joel Wax sequence is kind of the last chunk of the movie.
Yeah.
Where Alana helps him on his campaign. Gary films some ads for him just to make some money, and then ends up using some insider political information to open a pinball arcade.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this omnipresent darkness throughout that whole bit that, like, just kind of looms on the periphery, where everything seems great, but there's, like, this weird sneaking feeling that something's wrong. And, there's, like, that one suspicious guy standing outside, and you're like, oh, no, is it going to be a mass shooter who, like, kills one of our main characters, and the movie gets super depressing out of nowhere or something?
Yeah.
turns out he's just like a spy. He's just trying to like dig up dirt on people.
Right.
But yeah, the when the twist about Joel Wax's character hits, like it feels like it came out of nowhere, and then you think about it for a second, and you're like, oh wait, no, this has all been very, very well set up.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you think it's like, because like when I was watching it, I was like, oh yeah, of course, like, oh, okay, that's kind of, that's kind of a cliche. I mean, even then, it's like and that's the other thing is like they're never explicit about it either. Like exactly what's happening, but it's not, it's not explicit.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because that scene at the restaurant with him. Should we just spoil it?
Let's see, how far in are we? Yeah.
Okay.
Well, wait, let's just say, like, if you haven't seen it, the movie, there aren't like a ton of twists and turns in the movie, and the movie's really about living in the moment. So even if we spoil some stuff for you, it's still very much worth seeing.
Yeah.
All right.
What's great about the movie is not like the plot twists or anything, because again, there is no plot. It's about like the greatness of each individual moment as you experience it.
And how it shapes your perception of each character and how they evolve through or not evolve through the movie.
Joel Wax is gay. He's in the closet because it's the 70s, and he calls Alana, who's working on his campaign, to meet him at a restaurant, and she kind of has a crush on him, so she thinks it's for like drinks or something. And when she gets there, there's a guy there that he's having dinner with, and he wants her to walk the guy home. It's, they never say it out loud, but the guy is his boyfriend. And I think what's interesting about that scene is it, most plainly shows the themes of the movie, where Alana looks up to Joel Wax. He's like, Mr. Goody Two-Shoes, like trying to save the world. He's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington all over again.
The image of integrity.
Yeah, he's the image of integrity. She really looks up to him. She's kind of got a crush on him. And then when she shows up to meet him, he's with this guy, and the guy is basically like falling apart because he's like, why do we have to hide this? Like why are you like, I hate all this running around in the dark. I hate having to pretend and all this crap. And Joel Wax, who up to this point has been like, again, he's like Clark Kent, is like, look, I'm trying to run for office. I'm trying to help a lot of people, and I need to keep this under the radar. And they kind of have this back and forth. And the boyfriend says, like, he's like, so at a certain point, Joel Wax says, like, what do you want from me? And the boyfriend says, well, I just want you. Like, I want you to myself and not to, like, constantly have to lie about who I am. And Joel basically just puts him down. He says, look, the world is bigger than you. If that's how you really think, you need to grow up. Yeah. And Alana at this point is just like she's just horrified at what a dick Joel Wax is being. So, I mean, that pretty much condenses like all of the thematic content of the movie into a single scene. It's like, Alana looks at a well-to-do adult and thinks like, I want to be like this person. I admire this person. I may be in love with this person. Only for that to come crashing down when she realizes that like this guy is just as like petty, selfish, and vindictive as everyone else. Like, he's not special. There's nothing particularly great about him. And the irony comes in the fact that like his big put down is like, you need to grow up.
Yeah.
Which is what she's been trying to do the
whole time. Yeah. Or it's like the thing that she's constantly in opposition to. Because I think like the other main thing is like there's this dynamic between her and Gary where it's like Gary is like all right. Gary's an interesting character, but there's like they're constantly in opposition with each other because like Gary is so explicit about how much he likes her and like makes it really obvious, but then does things that are counter to that. Like he'll go and hit on other women, and then when she does it, like when she goes and hits on other guys or other guys start flirting with her, he gets all butthurt about it, even though, you know, he was just doing it, which
he's 15.
is human.
What do you expect?
I know he's a stupid little 15-year-old kid, right? Who's
Yeah.
trying to be an adult, which, like, when you're 15, you think that you should be.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what all 15-year-olds are like. Like when we were 15, we were just like, I'm basically a grown up.
Yeah,
And
like
did
I
just
can
tons
do
and
that.
tons of dumb shit.
Yeah, like like not only am I a grown up, but I'm also immortal and invincible. I can do anything I want.
And also smarter than all grown ups.
But like he's very explicit about it, and she's like very charmed by him, but is like goes back and forth between like she says she doesn't like him, but all of her actions indicate otherwise.
Well, it's because she doesn't
in a
want
lot
to
of
like
ways.
him.
Right, because it's like she's trying to grow up. And she's trying to move on and find something there. And like I think that like what's so great about that last, like that moment where she drops him off and it's like I think she's like you know, do you need a hug? And the guy's like, yes, or whatever, and they hug. And like she realizes that, like, you know, her obsession with what she's been trying to do this whole time is like it's like it's like a romance novel where it's like, you know, like, oh, I was trying to deny my love for this person, but the truth is I do love them and I'm such a fool for not. And it's like it almost, like, if you simplify it, it's very melodramatic, but it's not handled that way in the movie. It's handled very, like, very powerfully, where it's like, oh my god, I need to, you know, the whole I need to go to the airport before their flight leaves scene, but, you know, but different. And I like that idea that they both kind of realize, well, I mean, I guess Gary always did, but like Alana's path to realizing that, like, you know, she's found her, for lack of a better term, she's found her soulmate, the person that completes her, and like, instead of denying it to try and pretend like she's a grown up, it's like, just embrace it and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're both like every character is flawed. It's just like degrees of flaws.
Yeah.
Where, like, you know, Alana again is like this adult who acts like a child, and she does like Gary but doesn't want to, so tries to like constantly act against it, and, you know, kind of set herself up with more adult, quote unquote, suitors, like Sean Penn's character, who's just like a lecherous weirdo.
Yeah, that was
Joel,
hilarious.
who he's not even interested in women.
Yeah. Or the guy at the very beginning who is like still trying to be a child star, but is clearly like 20 something.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I'm an atheist. I looked at and I was like, oh, the atheism arguments, as said by a person who hasn't done any research in atheism. So it's like,
well, the best part was at the, like, because her family's super Jewish.
Yeah.
And then she's like, she just throws him out of the house, and she's like, what the fuck? How could you say that to my dad? And he's like, what? I'm just being honest, you know? He's like John Travolta or something. And she's like, are you fucking circumcised? And he's like, what? She's like, are you circumcised? And he's like, yeah. And then she's like, then you're fucking Jewish.
I mean, I was born Jewish, but it's like, oh my god, dude, you're meeting the family for the first time. Like, what an entitled little shit that you think you can say anything you want.
I know. But yeah, so she keeps trying to set herself up with, like, you know, more age appropriate, quote unquote, suitors, and they all suck for one reason or another. Meanwhile, Gary's very upfront about how he likes Alana, but also, like, is a teenage boy, so he just, like, any woman who is interested in him, he's like, hi, how, like, just, you know, he's like a dog who just, you wait, like, you jingle your keys in front of a dog, and they're like, oh, what's that? Like, that's kind of how he is with women, because, again, he's like a teenager.
Like, I don't know how far it would go, but, like, he really did remind me of, like, a child star who always got what they wanted and basically acted like they could do and say anything and there was no consequence. just like the way he acted, the way he would go into what was that restaurant that he would go into? It's like the something cock or whatever.
Yeah, it's I don't remember. All I can think of is like the throbbing cock.
The circumcised cock. But like, he would go in there and he'd be like, yeah, get me 2 Cokes. And it's like, oh my God, this guy. God, but there was he goes to like a nice, a smoky sort of bar restaurant in a suit, sits at the bar and orders a Coke. That's so funny. But like even like he's on the plane and he's like, oh yeah, this is my chaperone. And it's like, dude, you're like, I know you think you're the shit. And in some ways you are. And that's what makes him like humanizing, right? Because you could easily just strip away all of the stuff that makes him an obnoxious little shit. Or in the hands of a different actor, you could lean into it and make him just like completely obnoxious. But Cooper Hoffman does a good job of like keeping it like, Cooper Hoffman and Paul Thomas Anderson do a good job of like, yes, he's a little shit. Yes, he's a 15-year-old. Like the scene where Alana is trying to like sell the mattresses, and he's like, no, you got to be sexier. And it's like as a director, as someone who has directed shorts, I should say, it's like saying, oh, be sexier is not a good direction to give, because it's like, what do you mean be sexier?
Well, yeah, and then that's what's great about the scene is she takes it like in the most perverse direction possible just to fuck with him, and then he's like, what the hell was that?
And just his face as he's getting more and more like, oh my God, she's gonna go over to this guy's house and she's gonna fuck this guy and go over to his house. Like, no, that's not what I wanted. No, I'm losing her again. What did I do? Like, it's so perfect. Like, that's the other thing is it's able to capture that sort of like awkward, I guess it's that indie quote unquote sort of thing, but like that awkward feeling of like the coming of age story. It captures it so well in a way that isn't like Hollywood. It's not like, oh, look at these beautiful people, not that Cooper Hoffman and Alana Haim aren't like attractive in their own ways. That sounds terrible.
That sounds really terrible.
But like they feel real. They don't feel like the artifice of the machine churning out movies.
That's the thing with Paul Thomas Anderson movies generally, but especially this one, is that the characters don't have any visible artifice to them. Yeah.
It's I think so. Like the just like a brief history of it was like, I guess Paul Thomas Anderson directed music videos for Alana's band and was like, oh, we need to make like a film together, and then they did. So that's how they know each other, and I guess he found her like the way that she acts. I think he liked her sort of like naturalism, which I think that's what everyone's kind of latching onto is like, wow, she is charismatic on the screen, but she's also very natural on the screen. And yeah, they went with because I guess Jesse Plemons was too old to play Cooper Hoffman. They went with to play
Jesse
Gary.
Plemons like 40.
Yeah.
He could play Gary Valentine in Euphoria.
The Hollywood artifice just they take a picture of Jesse Plemons and digitally erase all of his wrinkles. Put his head on someone who doesn't have a dad bod. It's like, all right, there you go. Act.
Have you seen The Power of the Dog on Netflix?
I was gonna watch it because I was in a Western kick because I watched The Harder They Fall, which The Harder They Fall was fantastic. Like your review, correct. Yes, very much like a by the numbers plot, elevated by a director. The main actor, unfortunately, not great for holding down the movie. Not great for the lead role. There was something off about his performance. But then I watched True Grit, which is also on Netflix, and I was like, yes. And so then I was like, all right, I'm going to watch Power of the Dog. And then I didn't.
Well, it's just Jesse Plemons, your favorite actor, is in Power of the Dog. And he gives the most Jesse Plemons performance ever as the most Jesse Plemons character ever.
I think we talked about this. Did you watch the Breaking Bad movie, the El Camino? I told you about that, where like they bring back Jesse Plemons, but like in the show he was still like, I think in the show he was like late 20s, early 30s, and like still in decent shape. But then when it came to shooting the movie, he'd already had like 2 kids with Kirsten Dunst. So like they put him in the movie, but he's like this kind of like dumpy looking guy. And I was like, the two scenes are not editing together properly. Oh, Jesse Plemons.
Well, who did we talk about becoming like more and more themselves with time? I think it was Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
That's like Jesse Plemons as an actor. He just becomes more Jesse Plemons as he ages. And he's like slowly distilling his craft and cutting out everything that is not like the platonic ideal world of forms version of Jesse Plemons.
I'm excited to see. I mean, he's in like, God, I don't know how. You know what? This isn't Jesse Plemons cast. I'm sorry, Jesse Plemons. Maybe you could come on our podcast and talk to us one day about how you do what you do. But he's worked with so many really good directors, and I'm just like, man, this guy's got either like a great agent or just like a great look that people like. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm missing something. Like maybe he really is the second coming of Philip Seymour Hoffman, and it's just going over my head. I don't know. I will say this quickly about Sean Penn as Jack Holden. Like the fact that he was hitting on Alana, just basically using lines and characters from his previous movies, and she was just like, "Oh my god!" Like I thought that was freaking hilarious.
So fucking funny.
Oh my god, it was like, oh, perfect. That was another moment where I was like, "Oh no, is this gonna turn creepy?" And it was like, "No, it's not. It's just gonna be entertaining." And she falls off the motorcycle, and I was like, "Oh, this is so." That's another thing where it's like, oh, this is so sweet because she falls off the motorcycle, and like instead of just like playing it for comedy, you just see Gary running to her like, oh, so cute.
Yeah. Well, it's also like a nice little bit of, it's nicely symbolic as well, where it's like, okay, Alana, this is what you want. You want to be a grown up. You want to be an actor. Here you go. Do this stupid bullshit with Sean Penn. And at the end, she lets go. She like lets go of being a grown up in that moment because she's like, this is not worth it at all. Like this is not what I wanted it to be or what I thought it would be.
Yeah, it's a very good movie. I don't think it's for everyone, and I don't know why I say that because like I don't like it's weird. Like
don't say things like that, Matthew. It is for everyone unless you're the type of person who's going to let the Asian accent thing ruin a movie for you.
Yeah, well, there was the, you know what's funny is like there was the Asian accent thing, but like I think there was also another like there was like a Jewish thing in the movie too, where it was just like, did this completely go under the radar? Like, is no one commenting about how like there are people who are just casually like anti-Semitic in the movie, but like they're all played for idiots. Like it's so obvious that guy was played for an idiot. Who was like doing the real bad, is it culturally insensitive to say the really bad pigeon talking? But like it was
the John Higgins.
Yeah, like how did people like he's very clearly being played for a complete moron.
You're laughing at him.
Yeah,
it's very obvious. So I
like if you're laughing at him if you're even laughing at all. Because it's just like it's like The Office. Like when people are like, I don't find The Office funny. I don't find uncomfortable humor funny. I'm like, I understand that. But this is supposed to be uncomfortable. Like you're not supposed to be okay with this guy.
It's cringe humor. Like, yeah. It's like the British Office. Where it's like, it's so uncomfortable. You kind of just start laughing.
Yeah. Or like the fact that like they I mean, like, also, like, maybe I'm being defensive about it, and people will come out and be like, don't you understand that that's propagating negative stereotypes? And, like, yeah, I guess I understand it, but also, like, the fact that, like, this guy does this, he gets away with it, even when he swaps wives. Like when they're like, oh yeah, and it's the same woman. It's like, oh no, I swapped wives, but I do the exact same thing. It's like, well, yeah, there's probably a reason why that wife left you.
Yeah,
Why
well,
this
I mean,
one's
that's
not
kind
gonna
of the
survive very long.
implication is that she left him because he's a jackass.
Yeah, that was fascinating to me. Like, I don't know. I guess it is a world where like there is no nuanced conversation or there is no place to discuss it. But like, if anything, it is a good point of discussion. If you're like upset about it, it's like it's a good point of discussion. Like, okay, cool, let's talk about this. Like, why does that upset you? It's like, oh, it's propagating negative stereotypes. Is it, or is it propagating idiots in the 70s who thought that this was an appropriate way to do things and was rewarded with it? Like, I don't know. It's
It's a joke. These are jokes.
It's a joke. People. It's a joke. And the fact that you don't realize that you're supposed to be laughing at him, if you're laughing at all.
Well, it's like the discourse right now around M&Ms, where like the marketing crew at Mars or whoever makes M&Ms like put out a fucking like thesis paper on why they need to desexualize the green and brown M&Ms. And it's like it goes into super deep like levels of detail, and like these marketing folks put way too much thought into it, and it's like, bro, you realize we're talking about chocolates, right? But then Tucker Carlson comes on and is like mad about it. He's like, how dare they desexualize my favorite M&M? So this is the world we live in. It's fucking crazy, man. We got the marketing team that's like, we need to desexualize M&Ms and promote gender equality. And it's just like, bro, you talking about chocolates. And then Tucker Carlson's like, no, I want to fuck the brown M&M. Don't do this to me. And it's like, bro, it's a chocolate. What are you doing?
He's like, if anything, the chocolate M&M needs too many M&Ms on it. Come on. Oh, I just like, what's worse? Companies trying desperately to pander to audiences by addressing, confirming, and doing lip service, or like, dare I say, virtue signaling, or the reactionaries who go over the top in their sort of like, no, we can't change things for the sake of changing things. Like, everyone else but the company has gotten to the company. And it's like, no, the company is deciding to do this thing. Like the Dr. Seuss thing, where it's like the Dr. Seuss estate is deciding to remove these books. No one is calling for them to be removed. They're just deciding to remove them.
Yeah.
Like, if anything, people
like,
are just calling for a page in the front that says, this may be a little insensitive. It was from a different,
It's just, they're both sides of the same, like, psycho feedback loop, where one side is like, we need to change things like arbitrarily minor things for reasons that are somewhat arbitrary, and then make a big deal about the fact that we're doing that. And then the reactionaries who are like, no, you were gonna like destroy the entire planet by doing whatever it is. Like,
if brown M&M can't wear high heels, the entire infrastructure of the world is gonna explode. Like, oh my god.
Well, it's like how they killed Mr. Peanut, the Planters Peanut mascot. Yeah. In a Super Bowl ad, and like their reasoning behind it was like, well, when Tony Stark dies at the end of Avengers Endgame, that produced a really strong emotional reaction in people, and we wanted to produce the same reaction about the fucking Planters Peanut mascot.
We wanted to promote the same thing about someone about a thing that was created not even by the Planters Corporation. Like it was like the winning drawing by some kid who got like, a couple $100.
Stop trying to humanize your fucking brand,
mascots,
fucking brand. And then on the other side, I'm sure there's some reactionary that's like, how, like, if they kill Mr. Peanut, then the terrorists have won. Like, you know, it's just, these people are fucking insane.
I'm trying to think of like if Bazooka Joe doesn't have his bazooka, then the world doesn't make sense anymore. Like, Bazooka Joe never had a bazooka. He's a bubblegum mascot. It's just a way to sell bubblegum. Why do we care so much? Did you ever eat Bazooka Joe?
Like if Mars Candy or whoever it is thinks that like less gendered M&Ms will sell more M&Ms, then God bless them. I hope it works. I don't fucking care.
I'll say I might cut this part out of the podcast, but like, did you hear about? I think it's either Kellogg or Post. They took their brand off of Pop-Tarts. Did you hear about this?
No.
Apparently because there were like all of those memes where they were like boycott, like the workers are striking because they want, you know, a raise of like 50 cents instead of 25. Mm-hmm. Boycott the following products by this brand. And so like in reaction to it, the brand took off their brand name and was just like, oh, well, we believe that the Pop-Tart brand is strong enough to like that people identify more with Pop-Tarts as a brand in and of itself instead of Kellogg's, the brand name that, and people were like, no, you're not doing it because you think it's better. You're doing it because you're trying to hide the fact that you manufacture it. But it doesn't matter because that information is easily accessible. And the people that aren't accessing it don't care about the people who are striking. So why did you waste money on this?
Well, it's like, I wonder if anyone still drinks the Nestle slave labor water. You know, like, cause that scandal is still fucking ongoing. You know.
Yeah, no, I'm terrible. I have bought the Nestle slave labor water and drink.
I am all about the Britas, my guy. No bottled water for me. No Nestle slave labor water. I'm sure slaves made my Brita, but that's at least they only made one instead of like thousands of water bottles.
Another aside, like when I was growing up, the whole stuff with Nike was like very prevalent, and so I was not allowed to buy Nike sneakers for like until it got to the point where I was like, Mom, Dad, the only shoes that fit me are Nike, and the only reason is because they're made of mesh. Yep. So I need to buy them, and they're like, yeah, I understand.
Nike is once again embroiled in scandal, and now the University of Oregon is not allowed to have sports.
Is that true? What's going on with Nike? Wait, what's going on with Nike now that we're topical? Apparently,
Phil Knight is like, he's donated so much money to the University of Oregon's athletics. He basically owns University of Oregon athletics.
Yeah.
University of Oregon athletics is just a Nike like marketing stunt at this point. So it's like the two are intertwined now and probably forever.
They're gonna change their
if Nike
mascot
had
to the
an
swoosh.
official Nike team, it's the University of Oregon Ducks.
Last thing, and then we can wrap up Licorice Pizza. Did you hear? So Malcolm Gladwell, who apparently is like controversial, but he had an episode of his podcast, Revisionist History, where he talks about hyperphilanthropy and superphilanthropy in colleges, and how like one guy donated like $100 million to this really small school so they could start an engineering department. even though the guy who donated it went to MIT. And they asked him, like, well, why did you donate your money to this small college instead of MIT? And he's like, because, $100 million to this small college is enough for them to, like, start an engineering program. And so a bunch of other philanthropists were like, oh, that's a good idea. We should donate money to schools. And they donated all of their money to, like, Princeton, Stanford, Yale, Harvard, like all of these places that already have a ton of money. And so, like, the lesson there being, like Phil Knight donated a bunch of money to Stanford to help, like, a small, like, grad program. It was, like, $100 million or, like, $300 million or something. And it was just, like, how do you miss the point? Like, if someone donated $100 million to, like, our alma mater, they could do a lot with that money,
They would own it. They could, like... They could be Harvey Weinstein, basically. They'd have so much power, they could abuse it.
But see, like, that, like, it would go a long way. But, like, if you give $100 million to, like, an Ivy League school, like, you're not doing anything with it. So, like...
Yeah, it's like, join the club, pal.
Yeah, like, so the idea was, like, why are all of these philanthropists, like, it's like we talk about with action movies all the time. They just miss the mark. Like, oh, yeah, it's a good idea. We should donate money. It's like, yeah... But it's not just donating money. It's like, think about where it's going and what it's going for. Anyway. Like, they should donate $100 million to Paul Thomas Anderson so he can make a bigger budget movie. But I don't think he wants to. I think he's happy with where he's at. That's how I'm bringing it back to Licorice Pizza.
Well, any final thoughts on Licorice Pizza?
So I think we were talking, like, you, me, and Austin were talking a little bit about how the cinematography, like, it's not done by Robert Elswit, who hasn't worked with Paul Thomas Anderson since Inherent Vice, I think. It's done by, like, Paul Thomas Anderson and another guy, and I remember you guys saying, like, I miss his time with Elswit, and, like, I kind of agree, but I still think that Licorice Pizza is, like, a very, very good looking movie. Like, I don't know if he would have gotten that much out of not shooting it himself. So I'm completely okay with the cinematography. I think it looks great. I think they do a lot of fun things with it as well. So that's my final thought on it. The cinematography is good. Oh, and the production design is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
What about you? Any final thoughts?
Licorice Pizza is amazing. Go see it. It's a lot of fun. I felt like happy at the end of the movie, which movies typically don't make me do. Most movies that have a happy ending, I just feel depressed because they're shit.
I know. I was gonna say you're getting soft, and you're like, COVID is making you soft, but no, sometimes it's just execution. Execution. Speaking of execution, let's talk about Matrix Resurrections. How do you like that for a transition?
It's a transition.
Okay, so 2020. I'll take the reins here for this initially. 2021 in movies has been really weird because, like, generally speaking, I think a lot of the movies are, like, pretty decent. And so I know that you gave Matrix Resurrection it's fine. Mm-hmm. And we'll delve into the reasons why you feel that way in greater detail.
I advocate anyone listening to this to check out my review on the website.
Yes.
It's like 1,000 words, which is about double the length of a normal article because I had a lot to say. But yeah,
it's also very, very good at conveying why. So I read your review before I saw the movie because I knew a decent amount about the movie. I didn't know, like, the particulars or the plot twists or anything like that. But I kind of knew the foundation of it. Maybe because I read your review before I saw it, I went in and I was pretty, like, okay on it. So I've seen it twice now. I ended up, like, I wasn't intending to watch it a second time, but I was in the house, someone else was watching it, and I kind of sat down and I was, like, immediately, like, wrapped back into the world of the movie. So for me, it's a witness. I think it's actually pretty good. I think a lot of the flaws in it, the hard part is a lot of the flaws in it, you can, the filmmakers, and I think you addressed this in your review, like, it's one of those things where it's like, the filmmakers intended that flaw to be there. And so I'll probably be arguing that side of it. Especially with like, the one thing that stood out is like in your review, you say like the visual design isn't as good. It has much more of like a sort of generic design, because that first Matrix movie like really pushed sort of like the green shadows. So like everything kind of had a sickly color to it.
There's a intentionality with the original trilogy where, like, so the Matrix sequels are not great movies, but they are very good like philosophical texts. It's like how like Nietzsche would write his books oftentimes in the form of a story. And the story's shit, but that's not the point, because he's a philosopher and he's just telling you things at the end of the day. That's kind of how those last two Matrix movies are, where they're very interesting philosophically, but his movies are not great. They're not good, even. And this movie's kind of a continuation of that. But with the original trilogy, artistically, like all of their choices felt very intentional, where, you know, I mentioned this in the review, but like, if you notice, in the original trilogy, the real world is color graded, kind of bluish, like
yeah,
a blue-gray.
it's cold. It's a cold
tone.
color grade. Yeah.
And it's very kind of like gritty and dirty. And then the world of the Matrix is color graded green, because it's the Matrix.
Right.
And like those little things, just, they add to the psychological and emotional effect that the movie has on the viewer, and like how you feel being in one place versus the other. The new one doesn't do that at all. Everything is graded the exact same way. It's the same like
I don't agree.
oversaturated barf.
I don't
that
agree.
All action movies are.
I don't agree. I think in the real world, they actually do dial back the saturation quite a bit. They still have that cold look. Like, that hasn't really changed. But in the new Matrix, and this is why I give it a pass on the color grade, in the new Matrix, which is supposed to simulate the new world that we experience, they go with a very, very, very generic color palette. Like,
I don't know. The whole thing felt like a generic color palette.
You know, it's a little bit harder because they went with like the traditional sort of like not even action movie colors on it, but like that's like that super shiny, you know,
The
Ford
Paul
v
Feig
Ferrari
colors.
look.
Oh.
Yes, the Ford v Ferrari, like there is no like every frame is like hyper perfect, and in being hyper perfect, it's not good. Now, again, you could either say it's an intentional choice or it's a lazy choice. I want to say it's an intentional choice only because a movie that is commenting so much on sort of like the blandness of movies would choose a bland design for their new version of the Matrix that operates purely on emotionality. So they want to go with something that is like a generic like romance movie even.
Well, I guess the thing that's so frustrating about The Matrix Resurrections is that it is like the most hypocritical movie of the year. So like, okay, how do we set this up? Neo is alive somehow, and back in the Matrix, where he, instead of being a programmer, Mr. Anderson is a game designer whose most famous work was the Matrix trilogy of video games that he did in the early 2000s. And then Warner Brothers comes in and says, we want you to make a fourth Matrix game. And he's like, no, I can't do that. And then he has flashbacks to the Matrix movies, and then realizes he's in the Matrix again, and that he's alive somehow, and that the games were real. And And he gets pulled back into the real world, and then Jessica Henwick is like, I'm British, and because of that, you won't be able to understand me. And he's like, what happened? And then it's like, you're alive, and so's Trinity, and we have to save Trinity, I guess, because, yeah. And then that's the movie, basically. But, like, the first half of it is, yeah, it's so heavy on self-referential commentary, where it is like a reboot, a sequel, a summary, and an analysis of the original trilogy. And like all those weird, annoying like game designer characters are always like, what is the Matrix about? Is it about capitalism? Is it about being trans? Is it about It's like, oh, shut the fuck up.
All the frat boys in college with posters on their walls. That's who those guys are.
Yep.
The Matrix is my favorite movie because it fucks with your mind, man.
But yeah, it's
Anyway.
just like I don't know. It rubs your face in its own like meta bullshit, which is actually what makes it fascinating. Because it's like it's questioning its own existence. It's, you know, Neo is like, why am I here? What am I doing? Is there more to life than this? And the movie is like, why is there a fourth Matrix? Why is this movie here? Is there something more to it? And it's like, it's almost like Neo and the movie are both trying to find their own identity over the course of its, 2-hour runtime.
Well, Neo finds his identity, and the movie itself kind of realizes, I think, okay. Yeah, we can go into a lot of that stuff there.
Well, but no, it gets worse, man. It gets more. And by worse, I also mean it gets better.
Yeah. Yes.
Because that's how this movie is. It's insane. It sucks, but it's great. But it also sucks. So like, Neo's like, he's in the same predicament he was in the first Matrix, where he's like, what is the truth? Like, why is my life so dull? I have no sense of purpose. What am I doing here? Like, what is this all about? And the movie is also asking itself that, like, why is there a fourth Matrix? Do we need a fourth Matrix? Like, what's the purpose of a fourth Matrix? And like, I'm sitting there like, I don't know, man. I was hoping you could tell me by watching the fucking movie. And then like, it reappropriates the whole like Matrix, blue pill, red pill, real world metaphor for like creativity and stagnation in the film industry in a weird way, where like having your mind free is representative, and taking the red pill and all that is like representative of like breaking the formulas of Hollywood, freeing yourself from the traps of the past, no longer being a slave to nostalgia, all that stuff. Because like the Matrix enslaves people through nostalgia and emotion. That's what spoiler alert, Neil Patrick Harris is the bad guy. He's the architect of the new Matrix, and he's a therapist because he deals with feelings, and he's like nostalgia and feelings of longing towards the past and all this stuff is how we keep people trapped. That desire to want something more out of life, but the fear of losing what little you already have. And I'm like, wow, that's a great synopsis of like, life in contemporary America, and also how movie studios think about making movies. Right. They want to do something big, but they're terrified of taking any risk and losing what little they already have. So they pump out the same crap over and over again. And then at the end, like when all the problems are solved and all the villains are defeated, Neo and Trinity are like, we're going to remake the Matrix to be all kinds of like wild and crazy and show people what free minds can do. And I'm like, wow, that's a really great metaphor of like they were trapped in this like entertainment product machine, and now they're going to remake it to be anything that anyone wants it to be. Like they want to free people's minds and have like creativity be unbound, which is really awesome. Except the movie doesn't do that. The movie's boring and generic and bland and does everything that blockbusters do already. So it's like it is, if there was an Oscar for most hypocritical movie, it would definitely go to The Matrix Resurrections, because it's the definition of saying all this really fascinating stuff and then not doing any of it. And in fact doing the opposite of it. Doing everything that it says that it shouldn't be doing.
I'm like, it's hard for me to contest that only because I partially agree with you. So like, but here's the thing: is like, I like the ideas. Do you have a problem? So your main issue, like the hypocrisy of we're gonna make a retread of the movie we already made, but change only a couple of core components in it, and sort of like and sort of, you know, dust it off and call it a new movie.
Yes, it's the hypocrisy of telling me to take the red pill. It's a dude chewing on blue pills telling me to take the red one.
Okay, so I like the movie because like the ending where you're like, oh, they'll make everything, you know, the way they want to or do anything like that. Sure. I like the movie because it directly references like this is why we're here. Warner Brothers was going to make a new Matrix movie, whether we wanted to or not. We're explicitly saying that this is the thing that's happening. You understand that. Okay. Mm-hmm. We are going to now make a movie, and it's going to feel very similar to all of the retreads, like soft reboots. And we're going to go through the motions of that until about halfway through the movie. And then we're going to tell you, guess what? The fact that Neo is the one is not actually true. In fact, the reason that Neo is the one is because... You have thoughts? You have thoughts on that?
Yeah, Neo and Trinity are not Neo and Trinity. Neo was the one in the original trilogy, but he died, and so did Trinity. The two characters in this movie are like homunculi built by the machines and filled with the memories and personality imprints of their selves that were stored within the Matrix's data. So it's not really them. And because they were constructed together, it's now two people who are the one. Like, they together are the one, you know? They're the anomaly.
So you are welcome to believe that.
Also, it leans further into the trans stuff, because obviously the director is trans. And,
right. It's
it's
much more explicit.
It's much more explicit in this movie, but also being like having a man and a woman be the same person, like, doesn't get more trans than that.
I mean, I like the idea in the movie of the fact that, like, Neo, so in the original Matrix trilogy, like, Neo is the one. But the only reason he even believes that he's the one is because the Oracle told Trinity that she would fall in love with the person who's the one. So in a way, he would never be the one without Trinity. And so I like this idea coming full circle where it's like, hey, you know, the other character, well, aside from Morpheus, the other character that everyone loved in the Matrix, Trinity, she's actually super important as well. And now we're going to make it so. And the idea of the movie of him unlocking her potential and her, like, ascending the ranks to where she should be. Like, I like that idea, and I think that was pulled off really well. I don't know. I guess, like, it's hard for me to argue because, like, even with all of the hypocrisy in the movie, there were things that just I really enjoyed. Like, the fact that it's, like, here's a minor thing. The fact that the main character is named Bugs, like, it's a nod to Warner Brothers because she's Bugs Bunny, but also because she's, like, the first character we meet who's a real glitch. She's a bug in the protocol. Ha, ha, ha. I like the way that they reimagine, like, how you move from point A to point B in this new world where they don't have phone booths. You know, you're jumping through mirrors. I like the way that they have a lot of scenes that are similar, but they're similar in a way where it's like a lazy copy paste job. Like, this is the this is the only movie series that can get away with that and again, it's only in the actual, like, moments of the Matrix. I like the fact that they return the ending is more, like, yes, hypocritical. It's more on the emotionality of these two main characters, but it's like, it's on the emotionality of these two main characters, and the logic that flows in the world is flawed because the analyst is lazy, and he's like, it doesn't matter if these things make sense. It's like, okay, then we as the heroes are going to take advantage of the fact that you're lazy about this, and we're going to we're going to manipulate it to our advantage. I like the idea that the end of the movie is more partially, yeah, but just like in general, like the world.
So
yeah, specifically the ending, I guess.
I guess the way I read the ending is, Neil Patrick Harris is like, people want to be controlled. People don't want to be free.
Right.
Which is metaphorically, people want the same like shitty Marvel movie over and over again.
Yeah.
And Neo and Trinity, their idea with remaking The Matrix is, we are going to show people the benefits of not being controlled. Like when he says we'll show people what free minds can do, what he means is like, we want to show people what they're capable of if they, what they could do if they really wanted to. I think it's meant to be like inspiring people to take their lives into their own hands and to crave the freedom that Neil Patrick Harris says they don't want. Which metaphorically is be more creative, stop making crap movies.
Right, like the undercurrent of that, yeah.
The undercurrent of it, yeah, the subtext. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's kind of how I read it, where it's like, they want to inspire people to free themselves instead of having to free them by force.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, and that's, well, I was thinking more about like when the analyst is talking about like this new version of the Matrix that is like about emotionality and how like, oh, we don't think about coincidences, like, oh, like we don't think about coincidences happening. We just think about emotion. It doesn't matter if it logically makes sense or not in the context of what's happening, because we realize that as long as the emotions are good, it gives us more power. And the idea that like the robots aren't necessarily bad, but there are bad people in the robots, and that no one was able to come to an accord between robots and humans and power. Like all that stuff I think is interesting, and I wish they would explore in more detail. But that's what I mean when I say like the analyst's version of the Matrix is lazy. Like it's lazy because he just cares about generating the emotion. He doesn't need it to be like firm or concrete or anything like that. And also
he's like a middle management type who's in over his head. Because I mean the human robot war has ended, and it's more like a faction of robots are now against the humans and other robots because their power plants are like failing or whatever. And
right, because they don't have humans to power it anymore,
or they're
not supposed to. They're not supposed to.
But it's like, well, I mean, they still do. They just don't have enough.
Yeah.
Because the network became isolated. It was this big network of power plants that was then fragmented once the machines started disagreeing with each other.
Right. And that was the other thing, is like the machines started hating each other, but some of them started working with humans.
Yeah, but it's like the robots who control everything on the bad guy's side are referred to as suits. Like corporate types, producers, financiers, things like that. And the analyst, Neil Patrick Harris's character, he's like the showrunner on some like lazy network TV show called The Matrix.
He's the head game developer of a really bad VR simulation.
Yeah, it's a fascinating movie because it is just as layered and intricate and full of like interesting details to chew on as the original trilogy, but just feels so painfully generic and boring.
I guess it didn't bother me, and maybe it's one of those mileage will vary things. Like I think the fact that the plot was so straightforward although I got so tired of everyone saying choice, like choice. You're not really choosing if you chose. Like if you think it's a choice, you're wrong. You've already chosen. Like, okay, I get it. You're all about the C word. But like
Cut.
crap bag. But like I have my own like internal philosophy is that sometimes what great storytellers will do is take a simplified story or like a simple story and explore their themes based off of just a general plot. I shouldn't say a simplified story. I should say a generic plot. And I don't know if this happened with the other Matrix, because I never watched Revolutions. I watched Reloaded and was kind of like, okay. And then everyone was just like, Revolutions is a big mech battle. And I was like, well, that's not why I watch Matrix movies. Like, I watch Matrix movies to see Neo shoot things out of his hands, apparently.
No, Revolutions I actually like better than Resurrections.
I think you're the only person I know who is like, Revolutions was actually it's a watch. So I'll have to go back and watch it.
Oh yeah. Reloaded is still the worst one.
But it's got like two of the best action scenes.
No, it doesn't. They stink.
They're awesome.
No, have you gone back and watched them? The CGI is aged.
I know, it's so bad.
Poorly.
It's so bad.
They're unwatchable now.
There's also something weird about like the Matrix movies with their kung fu, where it's like every time they block a blow, they pause a fraction of a second longer than they need to, and that has always bugged me. Like it's always been pretty cool looking, but like for whatever reason, like Morpheus and Neo in the dojo originally, they're like blocking a fraction of a second too long on each go.
Also,
but
the action in this movie stinks. Like the Matrix was known for amazing action sequences, and the action in Resurrections is lame.
The action could have been better. I will give you that. Like I think there are actually more Matrix-y type stuff in there than people give it credit for, but there is a whole lot of over editing in this movie. Like,
well, it's over.
There's a little too much. There's a little too much in those action scenes.
Yeah, I mean the style is very much in line with contemporary Hollywood action filmmaking, where when the Matrix first arrived, it was much more derived from like Hong Kong style filmmaking. Mm-hmm. And that's what made it so cool and interesting and different from everything else. And it's also just a better way to do action. But yeah, with this, it's like I can't see what's going on. Everything looks really drab. All the fights take place in really boring environments. Like if Jonathan Groff didn't just eat up the screen every time he was on, the action would be unwatchable.
I know, he's so good. Again, it's not. I think it's not as bad as you're saying it is, because when I watched it the second time, I was like, oh, okay, there is still that Matrix slow motion. But also keep in mind, Keanu Reeves is like, I think he's pushing 60.
Yeah, but he's still like judo throwing people around in John Wick.
Yeah, he can't get those kicks up as high as he used to. And also, we don't know how much like John Wick 3, he had a lot fewer fight scenes, and especially in that second to last, like the last two major fight scenes in John Wick 3, like the hand-to-hand with the guys from the Raid and Raid 2, and then with Mark Dacascos, I think that's how you say his name.
The dude from Iron Chef America?
Yeah, the dude from Iron Chef America who needs to be in more action films. Because he's just like a fun-looking dude. But like in those two action scenes, Keanu Reeves' co-stars were doing an awful lot of the like fancy footwork there. So I don't know how many he had left in him. I don't know what kind of schedule this thing was on, because I thought that like from about the halfway point onwards, Neo was just doing the whole like force push thing, but it really is only at the end of the movie, which again is actually a knock against the action in the movie, that I forgot that the scene where Jonathan Groff like basically kicks his ass, there was a lot of like kung fu fighting, but it was cut to shreds.
Yep.
But again, like there was still more Like I think they needed to rely a little bit more on like Yahya Abdul-Mateen II and like the girl Catherine, what's her name? Catherine Henwick.
Jessica Henwick.
Jessica Henwick, not Catherine Hardwick. Jessica Henwick. Like you have to rely a bit more on like your younger cast to do more intense, like really cool martial arts work. Because like, go ahead.
Oh, no, actually, finish your thought.
Oh, I was gonna say Carrie-Anne Moss and like Keanu Reeves. Like it's fun seeing how far they've come as actors since the first Matrix movie, but like they're not able to do those action scenes like they used to.
I usually like Yahya Abdul-Mateen. I didn't love him in this. The thing with him though is why doesn't he just go by Yahya Abdul-Mateen Jr.? Why the second? Because whenever I see that, I just think like 2. He's Yahya Abdul-Mateen 2.
He's the sequel. Maybe we're pronouncing it wrong the whole time, and it's like Yahya Abdul-Mateen
Ill
or like ill. I'd be interested to see how you feel if you watch Did you watch the HBO Watchmen series?
No.
I'd be interested.
Also, why doesn't he just call himself Yahya Abdul-Mateen like he used to?
I don't know.
Because there's no like other more famous Yahya Abdul-Mateen that's gonna be like, wait, which one are you talking about? You know,
like Steven Smith Sr. I don't know. Like part of it I think is like he wants to pay homage to his father or whoever he was named after. Maybe he was named after like his grandfather, and so he's like, well, I'm not technically like the junior. Like I am, but I'm not.
It could be.
It's like the family name, like, I name you Henry II because my name is Demetrius V, and my father was Henry the First.
Henry Wingrave the Second. I can't take anyone named Henry seriously now because I'll just think of Henry Wingrave.
Henry Wingrave. I don't know. I like just to kind of finish up Matrix 4. I liked all of the performances. Even Neil Patrick Harris. I like to think in my head that Jonathan Groff and Neil Patrick Harris were basically fighting over who would be the new best gay actor in Broadway. That's how I read that scene when he like kicks his ass. It's like, I am here, people. Neil Patrick Harris is gone. Now go watch me in Hamilton.
Jonathan Groff is, he's 10 times the actor Harris is.
They're both, although they're both solid, but yeah, I like Groff is great. Like he was so underutilized. I think the first that most people will see him in is Frozen, because like all of their kids will be watching it, and it's like, that's a shame. At least he has a song in Frozen too, and it's the best song. But then you get to see him in other stuff, and he's like fantastic. I know. I still haven't watched it. I know that he's actually become the new main draw of like why I need to watch it, because I'm like,
yeah, it's a great show, and he's great in it.
Also, the guy who plays his partner is also like he's also another solid actor.
Yeah,
I don't know if he is in
that
Mindhunter.
guy's like a low key like David Fincher favorite. Like he was in Fight Club way back in the day.
Oh, was he? Oh, oh, nice. Speaking of mindfuck movies.
I know. Speaking of frat house movies.
Edward Norton's character doesn't have a name, guys. Mind blown. Okay. All right. Yeah.
But yeah, I like how Jonathan Groff is Agent Smith, and he's like completely different from Hugo Weaving in like every way imaginable. He's just a normal program, and then he gets awoken. He's like, wait a minute, I'm Agent Smith. I fucking hate the Matrix. I want to get the fuck out of here. And then he just dresses in like the most flamboyant pimp suit that is only outmatched by Yahya Abdul-Mateen's flamboyant pimp suit. And he just runs around beating the shit out of everyone, and he just like shows up and like kicks everyone's ass and then leaves, and it's great.
Actually, so like things about this movie that I love, like I know it'll be kind of hit or miss for other people, but the fact that the end of the movie basically just devolves into like a zombie rampage I found hilarious. Specifically when the people are running out of, like, people are like casually chilling and then like they get taken over by the Matrix and they run out of the building and freaking nosedive right into the concrete. I was laughing so hard. And people are like, why do you laugh at that stuff? And I'm like, I don't know.
It looks so
but it's
silly.
hilarious. Like, I love all of that stuff. And I appreciate that they embraced the nuttiness in this movie. Like the pimp suits by Yahya Abdul-Mateen as Morpheus. Like, and his...
To be fair, Jonathan Groff doesn't even have a full pimp suit. It's like a pimp jacket and trousers, and then he's just wearing a t-shirt underneath.
Yeah, I think what it is it's the whole Harrison Ford thing, where it's like, do I get to choose my own costume? But instead of going in like a very boring way, like Keanu Reeves might have done for this movie, he went in a way where he was like, oh, good, I can wear whatever I want. I'm gonna wear something that's comfortable and makes me look good. It's like, brings out my eyes, guys. So yeah, no, it was fun. Yeah, like I said, I like the cast in it. I even like Jessica Henwick in it. I thought she was good. Priyanka Chopra, for her like 5-10 minutes of screen time, she was great. I was like, oh, she should just always give exposure dialogue. She's like, she always sounds exposition dialogue. Yeah, exposition dialogue. We know that you are the one because we saw you way back when. Don't you remember? Yes, I remember. I was there. I did it.
She's the movie's Legolas.
The movie's Legolas? In what way? Legolas isn't... Oh, yeah, I guess he does deliver dialogue.
He's just exposition or summary. It's like, where are the hobbits? Well, the orcs camped here. There's footprints leading into the forest.
They are taking them to Isengard.
yeah, exactly.
Why are these trees making weird noises, says Gimli. Ah, says Legolas, the trees are talking. They awoken many years ago.
Like Aragorn and Gimli are like searching the campsite and they're like being detectives and they put together the picture. And once the picture is complete, Legolas is like, ah, yes, that is the picture.
Very astute. My elven eyes saw it first. Looks around suspiciously. The fact that like at that last scene in Return of the King when everyone's walking in and he's like, Gandalf, Gimli, and then Legolas walks in and he's just like,
nope.
It's like,
who are
nope,
you?
nothing. Oh, Aragorn! Like, oh, okay. Like Legolas, like Orlando Bloom just chilling in the corner, like, I will be avenged. Goes in for the Hobbit movies and is like overdone in that. Yeah. There's a last Lord of the Rings thing. There's a meme of like, I think it's like a press conference. There's a guy with no microphones and a girl with a bunch of microphones. And next to the guy, it says Eomer taking down 2 Oliphants with a javelin. And next to him, it with the girl with all the microphones, it's like Legolas taking down 1 Oliphant. I was like, yep. That's casual fans' relationship with Lord of the Rings movies. I like Legolas because he's got a bow and does cool things. Meanwhile, Gimli's like, I killed 800 people with an axe. No, we're not going to talk. Okay. I'll go back to my hole in the ground then. I'll go under the mountain. But yeah, I think I do like Matrix 4 a lot. I think the fact that it deals in a little bit of creative irony and it kind of reduces itself to like, Neo wants Trinity back. I'm fine with, because like you know what? I feel like everyone since the Matrix Revolutions came out hated the ending. Like,
I like the ending.
I think you might be like one of the exceptions, because a lot of people didn't like it. Maybe it was just like the casual fans. Like, I heard about the ending. I felt like I didn't need to see it. They came out with the game, which no one talks about, Matrix Path of Neo, where they're like, all right, fine, we'll change the ending to not be the ending of the movies. And the Wachowskis basically just shat on all the people who hated their ending, because in that, like, Agent Smith becomes like this giant monster that you fight, and it ends in a very comedic, over-the-top, corny way. But it's nice to see that, like, they want, like, it's like, okay, you know what? It's been a while, like... I think Lana Wachowski talks a lot about, and this probably influenced a lot of the movie. Are you familiar with the interview she gave where she was like people very close to her parents died months apart?
I've heard all about that.
And like, you know, if Warner Brothers was going to give her a bunch of money to make the movie that she wanted to make, like, why not give herself a little bit of like play around with the characters that made her famous, got her a bunch of money, and give them I think a satisfying ending. Like, I like the idea that go ahead.
I think that's what makes this new one so extra baffling, is that like the Wachowskis are two of the most earnest filmmakers out there, and I like always want to give them the benefit of the doubt because of that. Because everything they make is so against the formulaic cynicism of contemporary Hollywood. And it's strange that, like, being so against that, here we are, Matrix 4, that is also, like, weirdly hypocritical about itself.
Yeah. And then of course it's like, but is that the point? Like, you know, that's,
again, I don't know. It's like I
about.
want to give Lana Wachowski the benefit of the doubt because she is super earnest about this sort of stuff. But like I don't know.
A lot of the people who are saying like, oh, it's basic, like she's trying to tank the Matrix stuff, like she intentionally wants to end it on like, and if this is the last one and it ends on her own terms, like, great, that's fine, that's perfect. But I don't know. I haven't seen Jupiter Ascending. I think that's the last movie they made before this. I did watch Cloud Atlas, which I think I talked to you a little bit about, and I think I think like it's probably worth your time, if only to be like, okay, I see where it's going wrong. But like, I don't know, to me, they like the Wachowskis have not made anything that I would deem like good in a while. And I think even now, like the Matrix 4, one of the problems is like, I don't think they're the best script writers. Because Cloud Atlas, like the segments that they did should have been really interesting, but to me ended up being really boring, and didn't have much character. And I think that's kind of like that's not necessarily a problem in this, because like all of the actors are pretty charismatic and kind of bring something to it. And again, I think with the Matrix 4, I went in with lower expectations. Like I was not expecting to be blown away, and by no means will you be. But I do think it's more enjoyable than a lot of people are giving it credit for. Like, yeah, the message of the movie is muddled and mired just because of like message versus execution. But I think it does enough that it doesn't feel like a rehash or a retread. I think it changes enough components of the software, if we're going with this really bad metaphor, that it feels like a fresh enough version. And it does feel a little fan filmy, though. I will say it's got a little bit of the fan filmy vibe, which isn't not necessarily something you want to have in your movie.
Yeah.
I think that's everything about. Do you want to say anything else about the Matrix 4?
It's okay, but in the most extreme way possible.
I feel like I honestly, because I know a lot of people who have been like, it's not that great, but you know what? I enjoy it. I think it's worth seeing. You're going to have to wait for it to come back onto HBO Max, because it left, as of this recording, it left a couple of days ago. So, but like, you know what? Keanu Reeves is fun and stiff. Everyone's kind of having a decent time. It's not as bad. The only thing that's really bad is Jada Pinkett Smith's digital makeup. Like that is like, this movie is a very expensive film. I bet most of the budget went to her digital old woman makeup. There it is. That's my, because like surprised. It's weird. Like all of the lighting is really good. Technically, it looks like it should be really good, but it just looks like a mess. Like it's Cats all over again. Technically very, very proficient looking, but art design wise, just like, wow, what are you doing? Anyway. Well, anyway, if you want to read Gabe's review on The Matrix or any of our other fantastic reviews, you have a review of Licorice Pizza up there as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Tragedy of Macbeth as well. Where can they go to find it?
Underthewheels.com. You can also find this podcast on our YouTube channel, on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. Email, if you want to get a hold of us, is video@underthewheels.com.
Have we had any fan mail? Has anyone emailed us?
I don't know. I can check right now.
When's the last time you checked it? I don't think do I have the
don't check
password
it.
for it? Oh, I should start. Can I access it? If I can, I should start accessing it and checking.
Yeah, we haven't gotten any
No.
any emails.
Email us. Ask us questions. And go see Licorice Pizza if you can. That's that's the other thing with like Omicron booming and everything. Like the numbers are insane, although the death rates are down, which is nice. But like I feel like it's even harder to like justify going out to the movie theater. However, you might get lucky. Like for me, I was the only one. It was like me and one other guy in the theater. So if you can, definitely try and go out and see it. It should be a pretty sanitary experience. More like as sanitary as a movie theater can normally get, I should say. Like,
Yeah.
There's still cum on the seats, but the other C word. But anything else to go off on?
I on that note, I think we can call it a podcast.
In that case, I'm Matthew,
And I'm Gabe.
and you've just been Under the Wheels. Are you watching anything aside from Did you get Apple TV Plus, or were they just showing the Tragedy of Macbeth in your
It was
area?
in a theater, like down the street from where I live.
Oh.
So yeah, I watched it there. So it was, it's Macbeth. I don't like Macbeth too much as a play, but like the movie had some interesting things going on for it, so that helped.
Yeah, I think as a concept, it's a lot better. Like everyone's like, "Oh, Macbeth! Ooh, like you can't say Macbeth in a theater." Like, ooh, the idea of Lady Macbeth as being like this like sinister, conniving, wife. Like all of these things that are like really interesting in concept.
The problem with Macbeth is like a lot of the stuff that's wrong with it is stuff that's like endemic to most plays, but especially plays of a certain or before a certain era.
Like
where it's like,
yeah, I was gonna say,
it's
can you give me an example? I don't mean to like put you on the spot, but like,
oh no, I got examples, bro. Don't worry. I come prepared with them. Like Lady Macbeth is descending into madness. So to portray that in the play, in the text of the play, and in this adaptation, they have like a servant woman and a doctor guy talk about how she's descending into madness.
right.
And we just take them at their word. Or like Macbeth is a tyrant who's running Scotland into the ground. Right. This is never portrayed in the play, but like people talk about it. And that's how you know. So it's like it's one of those things where it's like in every other form of storytelling besides theater, you have to like earn the audience's belief in something.
Right.
In theater, like the chorus can say, and all these things are happening, but we can't show you. And then you just have to believe them.
You must take our word for it. Or I have a counter example to that, but go ahead. Well, I see where you're coming from. Yeah.
Like amongst Shakespeare's, most famous plays, Macbeth is especially riddled with that. Whereas like, in Hamlet, pretty much all the action happens in front of you. There's not a whole lot of people like wandering around being like, hey, did you hear about Hamlet? Yeah, he like did 30 things that are really important to the plot, but we don't have the ability to show them on stage. So, yeah. Whereas that is almost all of Macbeth.
Like, I haven't actually, like, I will contend Austin is, like, half right. The one adaptation that stars Michael Fassbender is
the Justin Kurzel adaptation is the best one.
Is
by
probably
far,
the
because
best. Except
it makes it work for a movie.
Except I love Throne of Blood, so fuck everyone else.
Well, but Throne of Blood, they're not like... in Throne of Blood, do they have a chorus talking about what's happening instead of showing you what's happening?
No, in fact, in Throne of Blood, you get to see an arrow pierce through Toshiro Mifune's neck in an excellent match cut. So, yeah. Throne of Blood's amazing. Okay, it's pretty amazing. Like, the problems of pacing that happen in Macbeth still kind of happen here. But I started the Michael Fassbender Macbeth, and I was like, yep, Gabe and Austin were right. This thing is freaking amazing. Just like the opening battle scene alone, I was just like, yep. But like, I ran out of momentum because, like, you know, for sometimes when I watch Shakespeare, I'm like, all right, this is good. I'm gonna take a break. And like, I agree with you. Macbeth is not my favorite. I think his comedies are a lot better. I like Hamlet a lot better than Macbeth.
You enjoy Shakespeare's comedies?
Yeah. I don't care if they're all the same.
You know how they say comedy doesn't age well?
I don't care if they're all the same.
You remember how comedy doesn't age well? How about 500-year-old comedy? I don't think that aged very well.
Finished.